Is Boeing being disrupted? I think the disruption of Boeing has been going on for quite some time now. Boeing is the largest, most successful aerospace company in history. And because of that success, over recent years, Boeing has become complacent in a lot of areas. It is less competitive than it used to be. It's no longer the company that it used to be. So some of the areas in recent years where we've heard a lot of things going wrong for Boeing have been in the product area, the actual products that Boeing produces, aircraft and spacecraft. Second area where there have been big problems is in the financial area. Boeing loses money. Its stock price is down over 5 years. And finally, Boeing has new competitors. Boeing has been in a complacent position where it's been used to dividing the market with Airbus and sharing the global market with Airbus. Well, now Boeing has new international competitors, and it's not going to be so easy for Boeing going forward. So let's start off with Boeing's product and quality problems. The real problem started in 2018 with the 737 MAX 8, 2018 and 2019. In 2018, a Lion Air 737 MAX 8 crashed into the Java Sea. And then the following year, in 2019, an Ethiopian Airways MAX 8 crashed as well. After those two crashes that made headlines around the world, got a lot of negative publicity, people did not want to fly Boeing aircraft after this, the MAX 8s were grounded. And this eventually became an issue with the MCAS flight control software. It was a software issue. After this, there were legal issues that went on for years and years. So earlier this year, in 2024, a panel covering an unused emergency exit blew off an Alaska Airlines 737 MAX 9. Now, this made lots of news and lots of negative publicity for Boeing over this. All these 737 MAX 9s were grounded because of this. Then over the summer, there were two tire incidents involving Boeing aircraft. One was a 757 at LAX, where a tire fell off the aircraft, crashed into employee parking, and destroyed a car, at least one car. The other incident was a 777 leaving San Francisco bound for Japan. It also lost a tire. And then a day following the 777, there was a landing gear collapse of a 737 MAX 8 at Bush Intercontinental Airport in Houston. So, over the course of a number of years, you have a lot of mishaps with Boeing aircraft that speak to its quality and reliability and manufacturing and everything that Boeing stands behind. But it's not just commercial aircraft that have problems, it's also Boeing spacecraft. Boeing Starliner is a crew capsule that ferries astronauts up to the International Space Station. Now, Boeing was a year late in launching this. It was supposed to launch in 2023. It didn't take a crew up until 2024. Now, the two astronauts that were taken up by the Boeing Starliner ended up becoming stranded on the ISS because the Boeing Starliner was not fit to carry people back down to the Earth because of lots of problems that emerged with its safety and reliability. So, because of that, the astronauts are stranded on the International Space Station until next year, until February, I believe, when Boeing's rival in space, SpaceX, is sending its Dragon capsule to retrieve the astronauts. And going forward, it doesn't look like Boeing is going to have a contract for using the Starliner to ferry astronauts up and down from the space station. SpaceX is taking that. And finally, Boeing lost a communication satellite this week that broke up in orbit. We don't really have a good explanation as to why this happened. So, as you can see, Boeing has a lot of product problems, a lot of product quality problems. But wait, there's more. Boeing actually has bigger labor problems, or just as big of problems with labor as it does with products. Boeing has 33,000 union members who've been on strike since September 13th. These are members of the International Association of Machinists and Aerospace Workers. Now, while they've been on strike, there is no production of 737 MAXs, 767s, or 777s. All those production lines have been shut down. Now, what's being reported as what Boeing union, IAM union workers want is a 40% wage increase over 4 years and a reinstatement of their pensions program that was taken away over 10 years ago. The final piece of the labor puzzle is that last Friday, Boeing announced 10% layoffs for global employees. Boeing has 170,000 employees worldwide. So that works out to 17,000 employees being laid off. Now let's go over Boeing's financial situation. Third quarter results for Boeing just came out. Boeing had revenues of $17 billion and a loss of $6 billion on that revenue of $17 billion. Now, Boeing's had financial issues all this year and before this year. One of the main concerns with Boeing has been their free cash flow. In the first half of 2024, Boeing had a negative cash flow of $8 billion. And then this quarter, they've had negative cash flow of $2 billion. Boeing today has a market cap of about $98 billion. Now, if you go back 5 years, Boeing had a stock price of $400 or over $400. Today, their stock price is about $157. So Boeing's stock price over the course of 5 years has basically been down and to the right. And finally, Boeing has a lot of debt. Boeing has $58 billion of debt. And last week, they also just announced that they're taking on another $25 billion in debt and equity financing, some combination thereof. Either way, the debt that they take on will add to the debt pile, and the equity that they sell will dilute the stock further. So here is where the real disruption comes in. The concept of disruption in business was developed by Clayton Christensen. He was a professor at Harvard, and he wrote a book called The Innovator's Dilemma. Now, in this book, he really detailed the steel industry and the disruption of the steel industry by new players, new competitors in that market. And the way that disruption works from Christensen's perspective is you have new low-cost competitors that come in and take market share, but they don't fight head-to-head with the incumbent players. What they do is they start at the bottom. They start with the least desirable customers, and they eat their way up the value chain. So who's Boeing's new competitor? Not Airbus. Airbus is just as bromide and complacent as Boeing. Boeing's new competitors are Comac and Embraer. Comac is the Chinese national aircraft manufacturer, and Embraer is the third largest commercial aircraft manufacturer from Brazil. Comac produces the C919, and Embraer produces the E-Jet E2 family, of which there are something like 3 variants. Now, both these aircraft kind of compete with the 737. Boeing has an order book of 6,400 Boeing 737s. Comac has, as of last year, 1,200 orders for its C919, but that doesn't really matter. And the way this works is Comac and Embraer are going after the least desirable customers. They're going to go after customers in Southeast Asia, South America, Africa, BRICS countries, basically. And these are the customers they're going to go after. Embraer is even going to go after US carriers. We'll see how that works. But it doesn't really matter who they're going after in the short term. This is a long game, and the real threat is from China. The real threat is Comac, because the Chinese government is backing it, and it's got all the resources of China at hand to become a real competitor to Boeing over the long term. They're going to start with the C919, which is a 737 sized aircraft, but they're going to go up the value chain to larger aircraft. They're going to be competing with the 767, the 777, and eventually they'll be competing with the Dreamliner. So, in addition to commercial aircraft, let's look at Boeing's other main division, that is defense, space, and security. Boeing's divided into three divisions: the commercial aircraft, defense, space, and security, and global services. So, defense, space, and security is the division that produces the Starliner, produces military aircraft, and so on. So, there are two big competitors there. One is SpaceX. The other is Anduril. Anduril makes drones. One thing that we're seeing in the wars around the world is how effective drone warfare is, and how drones are replacing entire classes of aircraft in wars around the world. And one of the premier makers of these new drones, new innovative types of drones, is Anduril. And they're building these drones on spec. Boeing normally waits for a government contract before it builds anything when it has to do with defense or space. But you have new startup companies that are well funded, like Anduril, which are producing combat drones on spec. This is Boeing's competition in military aircraft, in defense, space, and security. So, how does all this bode for the future of Boeing in the aerospace business? Boeing is losing money. They're going to continue to lose money next year, and maybe they'll be losing money after that. They have a huge pile of debt, and Boeing has very expensive workers. Chinese machinists don't make $51 an hour. The highest paid American ones do. And Chinese machinists certainly don't make $70 an hour, which is the rate that Boeing employees will be getting paid after they get a new contract. So, piece by piece, over time, Boeing is going to lose parts of these businesses to sharper, more innovative competition. Boeing's a big, stodgy company with lots of debt, high labor costs, and it makes lots of mistakes. So over time, this is how Boeing's being disrupted, and I think we'll see it continue for the foreseeable future. In fact, I don't think Boeing really stands a chance against any of its competition.